Let me ask you something, and you can answer it silently if you want. When a part of the body is no longer used, what do you think happens to it? It doesn't pause, it doesn't wait for you to have more free time, and it certainly doesn't stay the same. It begins to deteriorate. That is exactly what happens every single day. You don't move. Not tomorrow, not when you're old, but right now. Every day you choose not to move, you're sending your body a very clear signal that this part is no longer necessary. Muscle disappears before you notice weakness. Endurance fades before you call it fatigue. Joints stiffen before you call it pain. And the most dangerous part is that the human body is extremely good at hiding decay. You still go to work, you still function normally, you still tell people you're fine, but underneath, systems are being quietly dismantled piece by piece, with no alarms and no dramatic collapse. Just one cold truth. Your body's preparing for a future where it believes you won't need it anymore. And if this makes you uncomfortable, it's because on some level you know it's true. What most people never realize is this. The problem isn't that you don't exercise. The problem is that modern life is quietly training you to be still. If you pay attention, almost everything we call progress has one shared goal: reducing human movement. Elevators replace stairs, cars replace walking, screens replace physical experience, and even exhaustion is solved by sitting down. Your body isn't abandoned violently, it's made obsolete politely. No one forces you to be still, but everything around you rewards it. And when a system rewards stillness long enough, the organism learns to associate stillness with safety. This is where it becomes dangerous. You no longer feel like you're neglecting your health, you feel like you're just living a normal life. But biology doesn't care about social norms. Your body isn't designed to adapt to modern convenience. It only responds to one thing: usage signals. No signal, it downsizes. Not to punish you, but to survive efficiently. And quietly, you're being pulled further away from the physical state humans were built to live in, until one day, you no longer remember what feeling healthy actually feels like. There's something strange most people never notice. For most of the day, you're not actually living inside your body. You're living inside your head. You think, you worry, you plan, you compare, and your body becomes nothing more than a vehicle carrying your mind from point A to point B. You'll only notice it when it hurts, when it's tired, when it slows you down. Over time, your body learns a dangerous lesson. Silence gets ignored, so it stays silent. It doesn't scream when you sit too long. It doesn't protest when you stop moving. It adapts. But that adaptation isn't strength, it's withdrawal. You begin to fear perfectly normal signals of being alive. A racing heart, heavy breathing, muscle tension. Those sensations stop meaning I'm alive and start meaning something is wrong. So you avoid them, not because you're lazy, but because you've forgotten how to trust your own body. And here's the turning point. When you don't trust your body, you will always choose numbness over movement, because numbness feels controlled while movement does not. At that point, not exercising isn't a bad habit anymore, it becomes a way of life. Pay attention to your first reaction when you think about moving. It's not pain, it's a subtle resistance to feeling. Movement forces you to face a faster heartbeat, heavier breathing, burning muscles, and for a brief moment, you can't hide in your thoughts, you can't mute sensation, you can't pretend you're not here. For many people, that's what feels threatening. Because feeling the body means feeling yourself, and if you've lived in a state of safe numbness for too long, aliveness feels too intense. So we choose what softens, dulls, and quiets us. Screens, couches, distraction, not because we love comfort, but because we fear the intensity of being alive. Over time, the brain learns a distorted equation. Stillness equals safety, movement equals threat. At that point, avoiding exercise is no longer a conscious choice, it's a reflex. You don't say, I don't want to live. You simply choose a less vivid version of existence and call it normal. There's a moment most people don't recognize. When you're lying on the couch, unable to move, it's not rest, it's freeze. In nature, when an animal can't fight or flee, it becomes still to survive. And many of us are living in that exact state. Except the threat isn't a predator anymore, it's constant pressure, financial stress, expectations, and long-term overload. Have you noticed that the more stressed you are, the less you move? That's not a contradiction, it's biology. When the nervous system stays in alarm for too long, the body doesn't look for strength, it looks for survival. And survival, in this context, means conserving energy, reducing movement, reducing sensation. So when you can't bring yourself to move, it doesn't mean you're weak, it means your body is protecting you the only way it knows how. The problem is that this response was designed for short-term danger, not for months or years of daily life. When freeze becomes normal, life contracts and you start confusing being safe with being alive. This is where most people go wrong, and you might be here too. When you notice stagnation, your first instinct is to push harder. You tell yourself you need more discipline, more toughness, more pressure. But pause for a moment and ask yourself this. If your body is in a freeze state, does adding pressure help it move or does it make it contract further? In this context, discipline isn't motivation, it's a command. And to an overloaded nervous system, commands don't mean be stronger. They mean the threat isn't over yet. So the body does the most logical thing. It tightens, conserves, and becomes even more still. This is why the harsher the plan, the faster it collapses, not because you're weak, but because you're speaking the wrong language to your nervous system. You're trying to drag a frightened body forward with mental force, when what it needs first isn't orders, but signals of safety. Until the body feels safe enough to move, every promise of discipline will fail, not from lack of will, but because biology doesn't negotiate with willpower. So, if discipline doesn't work, if force only deepens freeze, what actually unlocks movement? The answer sounds almost too simple. Safety. Not logical safety, but biological safety. Your nervous system doesn't care about workout plans, fitness goals, or New Year promises. It asks only one question. Is it safe to move right now? And if the answer is no, it shuts the body down no matter how rational you are. This is why tiny actions matter so much, not because they're physically effective, but because they don't trigger alarm. When you simply stand up, stretch, or take a few steps, the body receives a different message. We're moving and nothing bad is happening. That message is the key. Movement doesn't begin with ambition, it begins with permission. Permission for the body to feel motion again, without threat, without judgment, without pressure to become better immediately. Once safety is established, movement stops being a battle, it becomes a natural response. This is where many people get impatient, because they're looking for a solution that feels worthy. A structured plan, a serious routine, a sense that they're doing something significant. And that expectation is the trap. When the body has only just begun to feel safe, anything that sounds like effort can trigger alarm again. That's why the way out isn't effective action, it's non-threatening action. Movements so small they almost insult the ego. Standing up for 30 seconds, walking a few steps around the room, putting on workout clothes and then doing nothing else. Feel the discomfort? That's because the mind prefers big narratives, either full commitment or nothing at all. Biology doesn't work on narratives, it works on signals. And the only signal you need right now is this movement is not dangerous. When you repeat these tiny actions long enough, the body begins to unlock more capacity not through willpower, but through rebuilt trust. That's why the real victory isn't intensity, it's showing up without force, without judgment, without the demand to become someone else immediately. There's a deeper reason your past attempts at change never lasted, and it has nothing to do with plans or methods. It has to do with identity. Every time you say, I should exercise, you're quietly admitting that movement goes against who you are. I should implies force, and the body always resists force. Pay attention to people who move consistently. They don't say, I should. They act as if movement is obvious, like brushing their teeth or taking a shower. Not because they love exercise more than you do, but because in their mind, movement is part of who they are. And identity is the one thing the brain defends most fiercely. You can fail at goals. You can break plans. But you rarely act in ways that contradict the person you believe yourself to be. That's why real change doesn't start with the question, will I work out today? It starts with a quieter, more dangerous one. What kind of person am I? When the answer slowly shifts from someone trying to exercise to someone who moves, behavior no longer needs force, it simply aligns with who you've become. Before this video ends, I don't want you to promise anything. No plans, no motivation, no vows to yourself. I just want you to pause for a moment and ask, if your life continues exactly as it is right now, with this level of movement, with this familiar numbness, what will your body become in a few years? Not in theory, but in very ordinary reality. Because not moving is never a neutral choice. It always has a cost, just one that's paid slowly and quietly. You don't need to become a better version of yourself today. But remember this, every time you choose not to move, you're voting for a future with less life in it. And every time you move, even in the smallest way, you're reminding your body that it's still needed. When this video ends, you don't have to do anything dramatic. Just remember this, movement isn't about improving your life, it's how you confirm that you're still inside it.